Stefan. I am Vice President of European Liberal Forum, which is the forum of liberal think tanks, research institutions, foundations, and it's a foundation of ALDE party, the Liberal European Party, opening a debate, opening Europe, opening citizens, provoking these debates on different topics, and I think this topic was chosen in a very good time. So I am really curious what will be the debate about, what we will hear from our guests. We have excellent speakers, and I'm very happy that European Liberal Forum can really help with this timely, highly important topics. Enjoy your evening, enjoy the debate, enjoy our speakers.
Thank you so much, Martina. Good night and welcome to everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you. French President Emmanuel Macron wrote recently, "Never since World War II has Europe been so necessary." I think many of you would agree to that. I think this is a good starting point. If we look at Europe that is now going into crucial elections in just a few weeks, this is happening against the backdrop of a shock. And that shock is Brexit. It is unprecedented in history that a member state is leaving the European Union. Brexit has already now cost us a lot of time and money. Brexit will diminish the economic and political power of Europe on a global stage. Brexit is a display of the destructive forces of populism that will also contest the same European election that we're going into. And Brexit will most probably, for all we know, leave most people on both sides of the channel worse off afterwards. The United Kingdom was supposed to depart the European Union 4 days ago. As you know, it did not. It's now supposed to depart in 10 days' time. We will see if it will or not. We could probably easily spend the next 90 minutes speculating about Brexit, speculating about scenarios and probabilities and help you decide where to put your money. But we will not do that because most probably that result of that discussion would be obsolete already by tomorrow. We would rather want to focus on the opportunities that lie in Brexit for Europe, as the title of our event says. Brexit has had an effect on Europe already by now, and as it says, in every crisis there's some opportunity. And if we look at the things that happened after the Article 50 procedure was triggered, you can see some of that already. As we speak today, the European Union is more popular among its citizens than ever in the last decade. We can see that lots of initiatives have been launched after the Article 50 procedure has started. An instrument that existed a long time before, but that has never been activated, is activated now. The Permanent Structured Cooperation in Defense. The Sleeping Beauty, as Jean-Claude Juncker called it. Are there any other sleeping beauties that can be kissed awake, or that should be kissed awake in the next 5 or 10 years? These should be the guiding questions of our debate today. And the title deliberately says opportunities for Europe and not opportunities for the European Union. And since the United Kingdom will still be part of Europe, even if it has departed from the European Union, we're talking about both opportunities for the European Union, but also about opportunities for the United Kingdom after Brexit. As we talk about political visions and ideas, I'm happy that I'm here surrounded by professionals when it comes to implementing ideas and visions. 2 members of the current European Parliament who are well positioned to still be members of the next European Parliament, and 2 brilliant think tankers from Britain and the Czech Republic. Please welcome Dita Charanzová, who has been a member of the European Parliament since 2014. You are Vice Chair of the Committee for the Internal Market and Consumer Protection. Pavel Svoboda, also from the Czech Republic, member of the European Parliament and Chair of the Legal Affairs Committee. Michael Emerson, who is a Senior Research Fellow at CEPS. And there's one thing that I would mention about you personally. As I've read, you have joined the European Commission in 1973, being a British citizen. So, as a British person, you have been part of the British journey in the European community from day one until the last day, which we might see very soon. So I think this is an important thing to know for our audience. And last but not least, our co-host, Jan Macháček, head of the board of the Institute for Politics and Society. We do not only have our excellent speakers here, we also have you, and I would like to invite you to engage with us as much and as early as possible so that you can ask your questions and throw your opinions back to us. In order to make that happen, we are today deploying a digital tool that some of you might know and many who don't know. It's called Slido. If you go to slido.com on your smartphone, and if you type in hashtag RDR, Rolls Download Roundtable, then you will be able to ask questions and vote other people's questions. And during this event, we will also ask some polls, and then you will be able to vote in those polls so that we get an opinion picture back from your side. So please don't be shy, engage with us on slido.com. We're looking forward to your questions. But before we start with that, I would now like to give the floor to our speakers. I've asked everyone to be rather brief so that you have more time to get engaged. Dita, if we may start with you, what would be your assessment of the current situation? We've had a lot of reform momentum with Emmanuel Macron and others proposing their ideas. What opportunities do you see at the moment for you?
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Thank you very much also to Prague House for hosting this event again. And I'm very happy I'm here with Mr. Svoboda, because I don't know if he remembers that we have our bet. We were together in the interview Otázky Václava Moravce. And we have our private bet, because I said that Brexit could happen. And you said it will not happen. I'm very optimistic. Hard Brexit. Hard Brexit. So let's see how it will continue. Anyway, I understand that you don't want to go into the details, or we don't have the magic ball to see what will actually happen, what will be the end of this soap opera, I would even call it. But I would then follow up on what you said on the opportunities. For me personally, I would rather say that there are lessons learned for the EU project. One, there is a lesson learned for us, for the politicians, that we should not play with something when we cannot then deliver on. Second, there is definitely a lesson learned for other countries that will try to play with a possibility and saying that we can leave the European Union and then it will be paradise. We now already see that it's not the case. Opportunities, I think, and now I have a question mark. We don't know if the Britain will at the end leave. So I will then follow on the presumption that the Brits would leave the European Union, that I personally regret. But if this is the scenario that we will now discuss, I would say what we will see is a new, I would say, reinforced engine of French-German cooperation and partnership in the EU. You already mentioned it, and I would subscribe to what you said at the beginning, that we now see, especially the French President, Mr. Macron, who now wants to take kind of the leadership of how the European Union would be structured in the future. I'm sure that we would not have a discussion about the, for instance, common European army if the Brits were not halfway out of the European Union. So definitely there will be consequences for the European project, that there will be, I would say, the shift of the power in the European Union. For me, as a Czech, definitely there are a lot of, I would say, challenges ahead of us, because we have lost, or we are losing, one of our traditional partners when it comes to the EU affairs. especially when it comes to what we want to do in the internal market, how we see the EU as a global player, what we want to achieve in the international trade. So for us, the challenge is to find new alliances and new partners to work with.
Thank you so much, Dita. As you've already mentioned, please allow me a brief follow-up to that. The UK was a traditional partner of the Czech Republic, also one of the member states that was not a member of the Eurozone. We've now seen a development where 8 northern countries have formed a new Hanseatic alliance, as they called it, and we've seen that the Czech Republic and Slovak Republic have started to sign up to certain projects of this new Hanseatic alliance. Is that a group of countries where you would see a lot of shared interest with the Czech Republic?
I think there are several platforms where I see personally the Czech Republic could work in. One is Visegrad, which is the regional, geographically typical cooperation platform. But I'm the one calling also for more coordination and more partnership with countries like Netherlands, like Denmark, and like the Baltic states.
Thank you so much, Dita. Pavel, what is your assessment of the situation? How can Europe move ahead from here?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I must say that before, let's say this panel, I had a glass of wine because to speak about Brexit without alcohol seems to me very, very difficult. I must say that William Shakespeare must be enchanted to see what degree of sense for drama the British people have, but there are too many acts by now, I would say. And I think that there are, as Dita rightly pointed out, there are also lessons and opportunities in that. Lessons, for me the biggest lesson is that if something like that can happen to an old democracy like the British one, what can happen to a relatively young democracy as the Czech one? How much, for instance, Russian or Chinese influence is needed to let's say, spoil a democracy of our size and of our age? This is something that I think the Czech Republic needs to take very, very seriously. At the same time, I see some opportunities. Well, bankers have their opportunity already by now. It's only for them to guess what the development of the pound is going to be. They already can deliver on that. For the rest, as you pointed out, even after Brexit, Britain will not disappear from the globe and from the map. So our interest to have ties, relationship as close as possible is for sure. The drama is only about the way how to get there, in my view. It is true that when Britain quits the EU, there is going to be more influence not only for France and Germany, but also for the Eurozone as such. The importance of Eurozone will increase, in my view, to a degree that should be considered by the Czech Republic, which, if you look at it from an economic point of view, is a 17th Bundesland. We depend, the Czech economy depends to a certain degree by 1/3 on exports to the EU, and 38% or something like that only goes to Germany. So for this reason, when looking for allies and partners in the EU 27, I would not look at Netherlands or Denmark. I would look at those with whom we have natural and intense ties, like Germany, like Poland, for instance. the chapter of our ties with Poland is something that could be rewritten. We just live in parallel without knowing each other too much, you know. So there are opportunities in this sense. Another opportunity, and I will close by that, is the European defense cooperation. That before the intention of Britain to leave the EU has not been developed, and now there is an opportunity to build a real pillar, a European pillar of the NATO, a European pillar of the NATO to become, in order to change the economic giant which the EU is, also into a geopolitical giant, which the EU is not. And in order to be a geopolitical giant, a superpower, we need more cooperation in the military area.
Thank you very much, Pavel, and allow me one follow-up question as well. You've talked about lessons learned, and you've talked about older and newer democracies. Great Britain got into today's trouble with the most democratic tool that you can imagine, which is a referendum. And that referendum was called by a Remainer, David Cameron. What would you say if a significant number of people or politicians in the Czech Republic would ask for a referendum? What would you respond to them?
Well, I would make my best to avoid that, because I see that referendum is maybe for developed democracies or developed and educated people, and there I still see and situations where you are not in a disinformation war, which we are in very heavily. It seems that the Czech Republic serves to these forces as a laboratory, I would say. You know, so this is not a good set of circumstances for any referendum at all. So I would like to avoid a referendum on that. But a second comment to your question would be that one thing is the referendum, and the second thing is that at certain stages and in certain situations, the political elite must face and, let's say, accomplish its duties. You may remember that Switzerland 4 years ago had a referendum on quotas on workers from the EU, and after 4 years the Swiss government decided that it cannot follow this referendum because it would jeopardize other and more important interests of Switzerland. So this is, let's say, an example of a strong political elite. Evidently, in Great Britain, we don't have one like that.
Thank you so much, Pavel. We've now heard two Czech voices, and we've already heard a bit about projects that, or policy areas where the European Union could advance in the future. We've heard a bit about changing power balances in the European Union. We'll certainly get back to that during debate later on. I would now be really curious to hear your take, Michael, from a British perspective. What are the opportunities ahead of us?
Thank you very much. Well, as the only British citizen on the panel, I first of all have to make a friendly protest about the wording at the beginning of your paper here, which says, Brexit is becoming a reality. We do not know. In voting that is currently going on in the House of Commons, which is painfully observable every evening these days, that option or proposition that has received the highest number of votes is that according to which whatever agreement might be confirmed between the government and the European Union, it should be subject to a confirmatory referendum. So the second referendum proposition has been and is still gaining ground given the inability of the government and the House of Commons to decide otherwise. And multiple opinion polls now show that, broadly speaking, if there was a second referendum, the result would be reversed by a wider margin. It would be, according to the polls, 54-46 in favour of remaining. So, enough on that. We see what happens, but it is definitely not yet becoming a reality. Now, you invited us to talk about other subject other than Brexit itself. And I have one proposition to put, which is in the shape of a paper recently published by SEPS, which is called Scenarios for a Wider Europe. Now the key words here are, starting at the top, multi-speed Europe, and then in the middle, wider Europe, and then the enlargement question, and then Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe. And you can take it from the top end or from the bottom end, but they come together in a manner that I would like to advocate. Okay, Macron at the moment is the main spokesman in favour of multi-speed Europe, and actually if you look at the Eurozone, the Schengen area and the PESCO defence business, these are three strategic blocks of policy that are developing with less than all member states on board. So that's the multi-speed part. Going down the bottom end, if you like, you have not only the Balkans but also the three East European associate states, Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, who want to become members of the European Union, which the European Union is evasive on. So what to do in this situation? Well, these two things, the blockage as of now of doctrine on enlargement and the multi-speed Europe proposition, they actually can come together. You can say that the multi-speed Europe will be developing the core Europe, which it is doing as of now, and then otherwise there remains what we might call a basic Europe, which is basically the single market and the institutions, which embraces all 28 members. Now, you can have the proposition that I'd like to advance that if the multi-speed Europe advances, this could be seen as relaxing the constraints or the objections on the enlargement of the basic Europe. And a way of heading in that direction, though, but that will take time, is that in the meantime, the neighbourhood policy of the European Union needs to be drastically reframed, and my idea is, not just my idea, but there's a movement of ideas in the sense that you should take all of those non-member states who are seriously interested in integration with the EU, with or without membership. So this includes Norway, it includes the EEA, it includes the Balkans, and it includes the associate countries. Turkey, more or less, we have to see, and Brexit, UK also, we don't know. But all of that lot together are integrating together with an extremely impressive but rather under-noticed array of EU policy instruments that are projected outwards into our close neighbourhood. Deep free trade areas, common rules of origin, energy community, transport arrangements, and the list goes on, visa-free travel. So this wider Europe is actually taking shape at the moment, or has been, and is an ongoing development, which could be, for the next Commission or the next European Parliament, let us say, supercharged and be given a branding and a policy momentum that would be an encouragement, a political encouragement to the frustrated aspirants for membership for the life of the next Commission. And after that, we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And please allow me also a follow-up question to you, as we're talking not only about the European Union, but also about the United Kingdom. assuming that the United Kingdom will not leave, as you suggest, or will leave, and do you see any chance for renewal or any way that the political landscape of Britain can get out of its current crisis? How could the British political landscape escape its current crisis? We have an electoral system that does not really allow for kind of a revolution as we've seen in France. What way forward do you see for British parties?
Future British base.
Yes, for the future of British politics, how can the deadlock between or inside the Tories and Labour be resolved?
A very simple matter, just a few more votes in Parliament. And the options are there. We can see tonight and tomorrow night, and you know what the options are that are being currently debated. Let us say a Norway Plus, or a simpler customs arrangement. Revoke Article 50, that is the nuclear weapon. If they arrive at the 10th or the 9th of April, in 1 week's time, with no solution and no deal Brexit is about to happen, then revoke Article 50 to be done like that. Thank you.
All right. I've checked the odds before we started this debate. If you put 10 euros on a second referendum, you would get 40 euros out right now. So it has become much more probable than it was before. And I think most people here share your optimism or your hope for that outcome. Jan, let's turn to you. And the same question goes to you. What opportunities do you see for Europe in the next 5 or 10 years?
Okay, thank you. I will start with a trick. So even though it's forbidden to, or almost forbidden to speak about technicalities of development today and tomorrow, because you said it's gonna get old very quickly, I have to start with it, because the future and opportunities are very much related to the way the UK would be exiting, and so if May gets her Brexit, or no, it's not only her, it's her Brexit deal, but it's also our EU27 Brexit deal, right? So if she gets it through, we know that we will have peaceful 2 years transitory period with a lot of time to prepare calmly some future arrangement of relationship of EU27 towards UK and vice versa, and it could be a very positive time but on the other hand, if a few days from now or on 12th April we have a wild, hard Brexit or Brexit without any arrangements, so that it would lead to a bitterness on both sides, and people would on both sides would blame each other, not only in inner politics in UK but so I'm afraid very much of this bitterness, and we should do as much as we can if hard Brexit happens to avoid this bitterness and blaming of each other, because it's when it gets out of control, it's gonna be very dangerous. So I'm afraid of this very much. So, but even though if hard Brexit happens, the main challenge is to avoid this mutual bitterness, and especially there was a topic of this mutual defense. I am very much more in favor of improving NATO, and improving NATO means that everyone, including Czech Republic, and we shall do much better in this. to spend these promised 2%, etc., and strengthen the NATO. And if Britain is leaving the European Union, it's much more important to do much better in our mutual relationship as far as defense and security and geopolitical issues and challenge after Brexit. And it has always been an important challenge, but it will be twice as important challenge if Britain leaves. So what would be if Britain leaves, what would we miss? We definitely, but it doesn't apply only to Czech Republic, but also many other new members or post-communist members, whatever they are. We are really free traders. Czech Republic is Slovakia, definitely Baltic countries also. Britain has always been our natural ally in emphasize like a free trade-minded country. So we would definitely miss that emphasis of less regulation, less bureaucracy, even though someone would disagree, because it can easily happen that if Jeremy Corbyn becomes next Prime Minister, it's hard to speak about less regulation or less bureaucracy, whatever. But still, even if these neo-Marxists in Britain take over, I think it will still be more recognizable, this approach of Britain, because it's very historical, it's in the genes of yours, that you emphasize less regulation and simple rules and common sense, etc. Even though if you look today at this confusion which is happening in British politics, it's very hard to speak about this common sense, traditional common sense, because it doesn't make much sense to anyone. On the other hand, we shouldn't make fun of Brits, because what is happening there, it's very similar in many other European countries. The country is deeply divided, deeply polarized, but you also have a deeply polarized political scene in France. You also have a deeply polarized political scenes in countries like Poland or Hungary. You have Catalonian issues in Spain. So it's we shouldn't, in Holland also. We shouldn't make fun of them. It just happened to them. They are in a very unfortunate situation. They went for this referendum, which was a mistake, but they have a minority government. They have no authority over parliament. So if any other European country happens to be in the same situation, it wouldn't do any better, I'm afraid. And I think I was speaking too much, so I will leave the rest of it for the next round.
Thank you. Yeah, one follow-up question. The Czech Republic does not have the euro. It belongs to a group of 8 countries, so-called euro-outs, who do not have the euro. And also in that respect, the United Kingdom was an important ally, because when legislation was made, those 8 countries had more leverage against those 19 who have the euro. Do you think it will become more attractive for the Czech Republic in the future to introduce the euro once the UK has departed?
Well, I don't think it's politically possible at this moment, because like 80% of our population is very much against accepting the euro very quickly. So any politician representing major political party who would announce let's rush to the eurozone would commit a political suicide. I myself am not against going to the eurozone, but on the other hand, it's clear that there are quite challenging times ahead of eurozone. There is an Italian issue, there is an Italian banking issue, etc. So we should also look how these things are resolved. On the other hand, I don't believe there is going to be any big dramatic integration in the core of the eurozone, because Germans are usually very politely welcoming any proposals coming from France, from French President Macron, but in reality they never deliver or provide anything. The response to Macron's speech from perhaps next chancellor called AKK was very polite beginning, welcoming beginning, but outright refusal of any important proposals. So German population is not ready to too much financial integration in the core of the Eurozone. So I am quite skeptical, and it's not going to change overnight. So it a little bit helps Czech Republic geopolitically that we still have a few more years to decide.
Thank you, Jan. And now we have some questions already coming in from the audience, and we have one question which is trending. If you talk about opportunities, you first have to talk about how to pay for seizing those opportunities. 11 people here in this room, Dieter, would like to know how can the EU plug the gap in the EU budget that will occur after Brexit. Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a very good question, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that are perhaps even personally involved in this discussion. Because, as you know, we are now trying to finalize the discussion on the next multi-annual financial framework. And of course, the biggest question is what we will do with this gap. That's the one point, and the second one is what will be, and it's linked to the opportunities, what will be the priorities of the European Union in the next 5-7 years. So I don't have a magic question. I think we have, first of all, I think we will continue some projects with Britain anyway. I hope that they are mutually beneficial for both parties, for the EU and for the European Union. Definitely it will then have an impact on the future budget. And there we are now in the course of discussion, where on one side we have to find new sources, and on the other side we have to prioritize to make the good priorities. So I have very diplomatic questions to the questions, but the reality is that these are the challenges, and there is no one answer to it. So my answer to it is that we have to really set up the good priorities, and then we have to find new resources.
Before Pavel can respond to the same question, what should be, in your opinion, the EU's priorities in the next MFF?
For me, the number one priority, well, we can list it, there are several ones, but is the security. I mean, I sometimes call it, let's go back to the roots of the European integration, because the main reason was to have a peace on the continent. We achieved it, but now we are challenged by different threats. It's not anymore the war between Germany and France, but we don't have stable neighborhood. We have terrorism, we have cybersecurity threats, and I can continue. So for me, the security, which is very broad umbrella for different priorities, is the number one.
Thank you, Dieter. Pavel, how can we plug the gap in the EU budget?
I studied law because I was bad in mathematics. I see two opportunities at least. First one, European defense cooperation. I saw various estimates. Let's say one saying the less optimistic, saying that the member states can save up to 60 billion euros per year. The most optimistic spoke about 120. billion euros per year, which almost equals to the EU budget. So should such even the lowest savings be possible, then you see opportunity for the member states to add up their contributions. The second possibility is, and there maybe this could be a matter for debate, last year I read an estimate from the European Commission that spoke about the added value of the internal seamless market to the economies of member states being of 8.5% of the European GDP. Compared to this, whether the member states contribute by 1% of GDP or 1.3% of GDP is really peanuts. And I think that either somebody should challenge this estimate of the European Commission or should admit that the added value is such that really increasing the contribution of member states should not be a real economic problem.
Thank you, Pavel. So we have some agreement here on the MEP bench, security defense being the top priority. Michael, I thought that the institutional question here would be a beautiful one for a former EU Commission employee, official.
Yes, I'd like
Do you agree?
Respond to the first one up there. Well, I have 2 points under this heading. The first point is that nothing changes in the sense that the UK was already opted out of Euro, Schengen, and up to a point the defence arrangements. And so the rest of you were there already and will still be there to work out amongst yourselves what you want to do. And so maybe there's a bit of motivation because this spectre of disintegration has been so worrying, to say the least. Maybe that will help the fashioning of constructive ideas. But basically, no change. Get on with it. The second point is really relates to my first intervention. I mean, if the UK is out with a deep free trade relationship with the EU, if Turkey, by the way, very interesting things happening in Turkey these days, if Erdogan is on the way down, so the EU will have the opportunity, or I would say the obligation, to stand back and look at this set of its major neighbours, Norway, Balkans, Ukraine, Turkey and the UK, and say, hey, we should make something more consolidated, more structured of this. We have the instruments to do it. And this also, we haven't mentioned this at all in this debate yet, this also would be of great geopolitical significance, because this is the wider democratic Europe getting its act together when faced otherwise with Russian aggression of different kinds.
Michael, you said the departure of the UK doesn't change anything for institutional reform, and it is completely right. You said UK was not part of the defense structures before, or it didn't engage in them, so its departure doesn't make much of a difference. But how do you explain then that Brexit triggered the establishment of PESCO, for example, the establishment of the European Defence Fund? These seem to have been clear reactions to Brexit, no?
I pass the question
I think I already responded that because there is some positive cooperation in PESCO, but otherwise it's much more important to improve NATO capabilities, and this is very crucial. And we see some very negative development in this respect. If Germany, which is a country which is one of the richest, perhaps per capita after Austria, so very rich European country, which is planning to create budget surpluses even with during the slower growing economy in the next few years, but it's refusing to fulfill their commitments to these 2%. So how could you imagine that they would be happy, much happier spenders like together with friends or within the EU? I'm quite skeptical about it. I saw an interesting question with Nigel Farage about the disappeared. Yeah, it's still there. Actually, I have this proposal that if UK is going to general elections, so they could unite the time with the voting to the European Parliament, and they would have very high turnout, and mainstream parties would defeat Nigel Farage or whatever, these extremist Eurosceptics. But this is just like a funny proposal, but it would increase the turnout because and it would be helpful to these non-parts.
Thank you, Jan. All right, before we go back to your questions, I would like to motivate you to ask more. As you see, they really get picked up. Before we get back to them, I would like to return to another topic which we touched upon already in the beginning, which is the changing power balance in the EU. And we've prepared a little poll for you. One of the most prominent figures when it comes to new ideas and visions at the moment is Emmanuel Macron, as you know, and he's not completely acting alone. There is a general perception of a Franco-German engine pushing forward for integration in the European Union. They do not always agree on anything, that is absolutely right. AKK responded very hesitantly to Emmanuel Macron, but they do push forward in some other areas. 2 weeks ago, they've created a parliamentary assembly, so they will definitely together establish lots of proposals for the rest of the EU member states as well. So there is kind of a reform motor working, and we have a little poll for you. We would like to know from you, without the UK, how do you perceive Franco-German reform initiatives for the EU? Do you see them very positively, just positively, neutral, or negative? Please start polling now, and as you are polling, I would like to ask you basically the same question. Pavel, when Emmanuel Macron wrote his opinion editorial in different, like in all EU member states, major newspapers, you wrote on Twitter that his ideas are not really European ideas, it's just French ideas. How do you look at this Franco-German engine?
I was not speaking or tweeting about all the ideas comprised in that letter, but I found out that Macron is very good at, let's say, covering French interests into a European code. You had 1 month ago this refusal of the fusion between Alstom and Siemens, and suddenly Macron comes up with the idea of reforming the European economic competition policy. That is something that just echoes what has happened 1 month ago, and it looks European. Maybe the Czechs should also take a lesson from that and cover our interests into European codes. But anyway, given also the history, also Nicolas Sarkozy, for instance, in this area was negative. Let's say he removed the economic competition policy from the aims of the European Union into a protocol. So legally that doesn't change much, but politically it's symbolic. I think that we should be very careful when we assess what really is meant as general good for Europe and general good for France when we see something written by Emmanuel Macron.
Thank you, Pavel. if you don't mind, first have Dieter's response to the same question, and then we go over to you, Michael. You have mentioned the positive impact that Macron and this German Franco alliance has already had. How do you look at that, and how should the Czech Republic position itself in all that power pattern with the Visegrad Group and the New Hanseatic Alliance and France and Germany?
As for the letter from Emmanuel Macron, I think I would start maybe with a positive remark. I think it's a good kick-off of the discussion. And I think it's good that there is a politician in Europe at the moment saying, let's speak about these topics, let's discuss it. So he provokes, in a way, a debate, which is good. When you see the titles, the headlines, they are fine. But then, as we say, the devil is in the detail, then I have sometimes problems. I don't want to have, and I was, for instance, surprised to take one example, to have an agency for democracy. Well, you have the Council of Europe, based in Strasbourg, dealing exactly with the issues that Mr. Macron describes he wants to tackle. Just to take an example. So, what was good on the other side was that we got the German response very quickly. So then I think we calmed down a little bit, we kind of had question marks, worries, what's going to happen. So we know that we are maybe 1-2 levels below the expectations of Emmanuel Macron. But definitely it means that we will continue the debate, and I think that we, also the Czech Republic, must be ready for it. It will definitely start after the European elections, it will start with the new Commission, and we have to be ready. We might agree with Emmanuel Macron on several issues. I mentioned it, my favorite, security, we just adopted to have the common coast borders to protect the external borders of the European Union, etc., etc. So there are topics where we agree, and there will be topics where we disagree, and then of course each of us will be searching and trying to find new alliances, topics by topic. So it's not like we might agree with Visegrad on certain topics, and then we will see other alliances on different topics.
Thank you, Dieter. And Michael, what is your perspective on the German-French?
So this Franco-German leadership question. Of course, the French-German leadership, when it is active, it has to be very attentive and careful towards building consensus and alliances with the rest. But just standing back from that and looking at it historically, these two have a pretty good track record together in European affairs. One can recall the Giscard-Schmidt episode and then the Kohl-Mitterrand episode, both of which were sound episodes of political leadership by very able people, and Merkel and Macron are also both able and responsible and serious people. Now, without idealizing them, you can look at the alternatives on offer. You can go and have a look at Orbanistan, if you like, or you can go down to Italy. I mean, it only has to be remembered that some of our member states are electing pretty funny people as their leaders. And if you bear that in mind, you return to the track record of the French and the Germans, it's looking pretty sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Before we have Jan respond, let me just say one thing. Of course, you cannot only ask questions with your smartphone. Those who want to ask a question the analog way, you're also welcome to do that. So we'll hear Jan's response, and then we will also open the floor for questions.
So with Macron's proposal, my trouble is that it has already been a third speech. It wasn't a speech, it was a letter to the citizens the last time, but he already had like his Sorbonne speech, his Aachen speech, and now this letter to the citizens. He always comes with a wish list of proposals, many proposals. I am lacking any, some kind of thinking in a way of providing us with some new architecture or some architecture of the, not like ideas that the EU should do this and that and create this agency and that agency. It's always like a wish list, and when it is usually turned down, politely turned down by Germans, he comes with a new wish list, and when it's turned down again, he comes with it without mentioning what happened to these ideas from Sorbona's speech or from Athens' speech. He comes with new proposals. Plus, I'm lacking some kind of a architecture, because if you want to do more things in Brussels, in the center, you also have to provide some feedback, some political feedback, some more political control, etc., which is very complicated, or definitely. But I wanted to mention two more things. One is that we may speak about opportunities and challenges, so it's not only about, let's not speak only about EU, but we should also briefly speak about Britain. I am not that pessimistic. I'm if Brexit happens in a short term, and especially hard Brexit, it's going to be a disaster. Even conservative institutions like Bank of England are coming with really horror perspectives for short term, but for the long term, nobody knows. Nobody knows, because economic development in the UK without Europe or with Europe, this is such a complicated issue that no one is able to do any predictions. It depends at first on the atmosphere in the society, on the level of trust in the society, on the level of optimism, enthusiasm, etc., etc. So if it's going to be very negative for Britain or positive 10 years from now or 20 years from now, we don't know. It also happens, because we would compare, it also happens how successful EU27 is in the meantime. So there is, even in short term it would be negative, but in the long term nobody knows. No one can say that in 10 years from now it's going to be negative. So and the very last thing that we could somehow say that if we don't have Britain, we would have to invent it somehow. So it's like the biggest challenge. I agree with Dita absolutely that we should seek new allies, and all these countries which are like free trading nations, like free-minded nations, like Holland, Baltic countries, Czech Republic, Slovakia, they should, Denmark, they should really get together and be this sort of beacon of freedom, even without Britain. So there must be such an engine in Europe, and it should be. So if we gonna lose Britain, we have to replace it with our new own Britain, because I still believe that freedom is what we would miss most with the UK, is that it's country which values freedom very dearly, whereas I have certain doubts that for Germany it's equally important. Germans want to be the best in everything. They want to have the best soccer team and the best cars and the best this and the best refugee integration policy and this and that. And France wants to have its very well functioning government and perfectly functioning state. But for Brits, the freedom and free trade and free business environment, it's a very precious thing, I believe. So if we lose Britain, we will have to replace it somehow. Sorry.
Yeah, you provoked Michael in the middle of your speech, so let's have him respond.
With respect, I disagree with the view that, well, somehow it's sorted out, so they're pragmatic people, they'll find their way. This is a time for decision, reflection as to what the consequences are, maximum information, and I'll just cite two factors amongst a dozen. One is on the economic side. More than half of the British manufacturing industry is foreign owned. These multinationals, who therefore dominate the advanced manufacturing sector in the United Kingdom, are all in the European supply chain business. They are being stricken down. So you will have a recession for as long as the eye can see. Bad move. Second point, a completely different one. I have several teenage granddaughters at school in London, and I consult them and their classmates. By the way, all of them want to remain, but their argument is a rather interesting one. They say, we have grown up, and after all, they're teenagers really, so they've really grown up. We've grown up with the right to live, study, work, travel, retire, anywhere in Europe. These are our rights. And you, the Brexit people, or the people who are disastrous move, which we feel very strongly about. This is our future that you're taking away from us. These arguments mean something to you.
You also wanted to respond to that.
Thank you. I just wanted to react to what Jan said. It created, if I understood well, an impression that the Czech Republic is a champion of free trade, which I doubt seriously. Free trade agreements are an opportunity. If you look at how the opportunity is being seized in Czech Republic, highways, non-existent basically, railways, Deutsche Bahn begins to once again to go from Berlin to Vienna through Munich because it's 1 hour shorter than through Prague. But it speaks about the opportunities, whether you are accessible or not. These are the preconditions of making use of free trade. How can we make full use of free trade without having the euro? So, in my view, I think that we should first create conditions to be good traders, to be good free traders, and then we can speak about looking for other allies among states like Netherlands. But up to now, doesn't make sense to me.
Dita, you also wanted to respond to that.
Yes. I continue to disagree, but I disagree with Pavel. I spent 10 years dealing with common trade policy, 5 years here in Brussels. And what I understood from what Jan said was exactly what I felt always. We had like-minded group of several member states where the Brits were the leading voice, and the Czechs were part of it. The Czechs were members of the like-minded countries in the European Union calling for more free trade agreements with third countries, calling for removing barriers in the internal market. And you name it, you continue. We don't have the leader now. I'm sorry, we don't have the leader. We still have the like-minded group. I will not quote, but there was half year ago an important ambassador from the EU country coming to my office saying, Dita, we don't have a leader. Our voice is not heard. And then we will have the French common trade policy. You know what it means? We will close the European Union market. So that was my point where I fully agree that the Czech Republic now has to find better, I would not say better allies, but we have to be stronger together, those that are still calling for free trade both in the internal market, more liberalization, no protectionism at home, and no protectionism abroad.
Thank you, Dita. I'm happy that you brought the debate a bit back to those power balances because we still had our little poll and we would now like to look at the results. I can read them out for you so that you don't get a stiff neck. Interestingly, in the room, those French-German initiatives are perceived rather negatively, with 45% saying they perceive it as negative, and only 34% think they are positive, 13% neutral, and only 8% think they are very positive. All right, interesting opinion pattern from the room. Surprise to you, or? Not really.
I think that it's not surprising because most of the audience is Czech, I suppose. And this more integration into the core of Europe is not at the moment very advantageous for the Czech Republic. Otherwise, it's absolutely rational if the Eurozone integrates more, but it's because you don't have many monetary unions without any taxation, etc., and a common bond, so that they all deposit insurance, but it's just not in the interest of Czech citizens at the moment, because our population is very much against going to the Eurozone, and so that's how I understand it. Otherwise,
a bit similar to what Dieter has just explained. All right, let's see if we have some more questions. Do you have some questions in the room? Yes, I can see a question that there, the lady in the back, in the center back. And then you, we will collect those two.
Thank you, Chairman, for letting also the audience who was born before the smartphones to ask questions.
Appreciate it.
In fact, I have two questions. Sorry, my name is Jarkova, and I have two questions. One is short term, one is long term. The one on short term. Imagine if we put together a stronger, like-minded group of the Hanseatic group, of the group which likes the free trade. Will it persuade Britain to stay in Britain? I know not the granddaughters, they have a different motive, but could it persuade the people who are rather negative or in between to stay longer, because they will understand that their rights, or that their rights, that their worries or their concern are now going to be better represented with this group. That was question number one. Now question number two. The issue of polarization was mentioned. Also in UK, the population is polarized. Brexiters, stayers. In Italy, in Spain, the situation is polarized. So my question for the very long term, and I'm thinking more in terms of 20, 50, 100 years ago, could you imagine a situation, either at a European scale or at a worldwide scale, where nations would no longer play a role? Because in every nation you have this polarization, but you have some kind of architecture of the society which is somehow based on the polarization. Thank you.
So if I understand you right, if we can have societies without nations.
Yes, based more on the polarization. If this could lead to a new architecture, somehow.
But then you'd still have polarized groups that were in one nation before. How would... I'm not sure if we understood that question.
That perhaps, and I do not know how, I'm just asking if this would be possible, that the fact, let's say if all across Europe, the society is divided in every national state, staying in Europe, non-staying in Europe. This would certainly be issue or a concern of the Czechs. So then we have already Czechs and Brexit and Britain, where we have the same polarization. So could you, in the future, somehow see the architecture of the society, which would be somehow different than what we have now?
Okay, understood. And then we have a third question here in the third row.
Thank you. My question is to Dieter. If the Czechs are such big free traders, as you say, also outside ALDE, but within society as a whole, how come the Czechs are part of the Visegrad group but not of the New Hanseatic League?
Right. I would suggest we start with that one, if you agree.
Well, I think that it doesn't contradict each other. Yeah? What I said at the beginning is, it's my experience that for different issues you need different alliances. So I see still Czech Republic being part of the like-minded group, also on the new topics like on digital, on international trade, on internal market. While on other issues we use more the regional platform Visegrad. So it doesn't contradict each other in my view. I will try to respond to these two questions. The short one was the short-term one was clear. I don't think that any new style of cooperation, any new setup of like-minded countries in Europe would actually change anything in Britain, in my view, because the referendum we have to ask the people that know better than the British politics, but my impression is that the referendum was not so much about how much I'm linked with the EU and with like-minded countries, that there were different motivation for people voting in this referendum. And as I would say with any referendum, also the national topics prevail. On the long term, I still have difficulties to understand it, but what came to my mind is the European Parliament, where we don't sit as the countries, but where we sit as you said, societies perhaps, where I'm liberal, my colleague is from the EPP, so in a way we created it perhaps in the Parliament, that you have the Council where you have the nations perhaps, and we sit according to our kind of ideology or different setups, so in a way it works, but I don't know if it's the best response to the question.
I think it was a very good response. Thank you. Yes, for sure. And by the way, we will have a bit more time now before we go to dinner, so continue to ask some questions. We have like 10 more minutes. Please, Michael.
I'd like to comment on the like-minded intervention at the back there. I mean, on this panel, you've been referring mainly to liberal trade like-minded. Of course, there's several like-minded clubs. And another one I've had the occasion to be observing quite closely recently is that the countries interested in an activist policy towards Eastern Europe, Ukraine first of all. That like-minded group basically is Baltics. I mean, the three small Baltic states, plus Sweden, plus Finland, Poland, and to some extent Germany, but Germany is more equivocal. But that like-minded group are reasonably well organized and visible, and they want a more activist policy towards the associated countries of Eastern Europe. Now, the interesting question for today, since we're in Prague House, is where the Visegrad Four fit into this. Of course, Poland is in that like-minded group. When I, as it were, met them recently, the Czech Republic and Slovakia were not present, and Hungary was even less present. But that maybe is a question. I mean, if the Visegrad Four at some point could reunite itself and add to the Baltic group, that becomes a pretty impressive phalanx of countries with policy-shaping capability. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Can I just
yes.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to react that you said like that Czechs are like big free traders, and well, they are like the export-oriented economy, one of the most open economies in Europe, and we are really absolutely dependent on export. And so it's absolute necessity that we are like free trade. That's the reality we must be and we will be. and it's and if you look at the opposition to TTIP, like which was how it was in Germany, in France, in Czech Republic, perhaps it's more ignorance, but people just didn't care. You know, if you would do as a think tanker, I know it very well. If you do a public discussion about the TTIP, no one would show up. It's absolutely so. People at least like take it like as normal that there should be free trade, and they don't care. Sorry.
Both of our MEPs have mentioned security and defense as their top priority for the EU for the near future, and this matches really well with the question that has been top-rated among you. The question is, will Brexit trigger an EU-style NATO form of military cooperation? So I think the question is, how far do you think will that cooperation go, and how far should that cooperation go? Pavel, what's your opinion on that?
I think that it should follow the path of gradual European integration as we see it developing in general. I think that small projects, one after another, which would lead to more interoperability of armies of member states, so that they can be used as one army eventually if needed. Such proposals as the one of Chancellor Merkel recently to build up this, how do you call it, the
aircraft carrier?
Aircraft carrier, yeah. Thank you very much. Aircraft carrier is something that I applaud. That is concrete projects that are built and that will one day create something that might resemble something like an European army.
Dieter, the other champion of European defense, how would you look at that?
I'm more champion of security. Defense, there I would say that it's a project, step-by-step project. And if I read carefully the question, trigger in EU-style NATO form, I don't think so. For me, NATO is and should be, in my view, the main pillar of security in Europe. But what I would rather like to see is to have strong EU pillar within the NATO, but not to change it. I mean, we will have NATO as the main security organization for Europe. And I don't see any other option at the moment. And within this organization, I want to see strong European pillar.
Thank you, Dieter. So we're now slowly approaching the end of our time. We would like to put forward a final poll for you. We haven't speculated very much about Brexit. This was what we were aiming to do, but we would end with a bit of speculation. We've heard, Michael, that you are very much hoping that things are still turning out differently than many expect. So now we would like to ask you, what do you think? Will the United Kingdom still, or again, be a member of the European Union in 15 years' time? So we're looking forward to have your opinion on that. That's right. I was very much hoping that we could end this debate on a positive note, and with 30 votes in, it looks pretty much as if the United Kingdom will still or again be a member of the European Union in 15 years' time. I think we all very much hope for it, and I think this debate showed once again that a departure of the United Kingdom would be a disaster, not only for the Czech Republic, but for the whole European Union. We've discussed a bit the power balances within the European Union. We've discussed the role of the Czech Republic in the European Union, and the fact that it will now have to act a bit more flexibly with like-minded countries to achieve its goals, most prominently free trade and the integration of the internal market. And we've heard from our MEPs that security and defense can be a project, can be an opportunity that should be advanced from now on. We still hope, Michael, that you are right. We still hope that Brexit will not happen. Fingers crossed. We will all watch the events in the upcoming days. I would now like to close this debate by saying